To Tron Jordheim. There we go. So we're recording again. So we've got Tron Jordheim's here with one of the businesses that he's involved with, the Call Here self-storage call center. You know, we are in a day of touchless and no contact, and geez, I don't know what other terms you can probably share with us, Tron, of all the new terms that are being used for the new way to transact in these times. But just a brief introduction for Tron. I'm sure that the majority of you know him that are on the presentation. Tron's been in the industry. He's an advocate for the industry. He's, you know, on every side of helping facilities and operators make sure they're making the best bang for their buck and profitable and setting them up for success upon exit. And oh boy, I'm not going to take all your time introducing you, Tron. So go ahead. Here's Tron Jordheim. I think, Tron, you there? There he is.
Well, it might help if I unmute. I was trying to be polite to everybody and sitting here talking without saying a thing. So how about that? How's the sound, everybody? We doing okay with that?
Sounds great here.
Fantastic. All right. Let me see if I can go ahead and pull up just a little guide for us to get through the talk. It all takes a second.
And while Tron's getting set up, I'll just remind everybody, questions and answers, there's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Please utilize that. Type in your question. When Tron's done, we'll make sure he gets them all answered. So off to you, Tron.
All right, excellent. It looks like my screen is going to let me share. I have to hit open. And then let's see. Oh my gosh, I think it's happening. It is. Fantastic. All right. So we are going to talk about call centers in the COVID-19 era. So I was talking to some folks who have, you know, some older grandparents, and they were saying they thought their grandparents were a little quirky because they lived through the Great Depression. So I can only imagine what my grandkids and great-grandkids are going to say about me and my kids in years in the future when they say, oh, they're a little wacky because, you know, they lived through COVID-19. So here we are, we're living in a new era, and what are we going to do? All right. So call centers play a huge part in being able to manage our way through it. And so let's talk a little bit about that. So first of all, before I do that, shameless plug, you see that beach there out in front of us? That's where we're going to be at the Hawaii Self-Storage Unconference. And the Storage Group is one of our fantastic sponsors, as well as selfstorageauction.com. You'll be hearing from Tony later on. I'm just showing you some great pictures because when it's time to come out of quarantine, we're going to want to be able to do that. And what better place to do it than right there at the Marriott Waikoloa Resort on the Big Island of Hawaii. So we're planning on doing it this October, assuming quarantine things work out. If not, we'll be there next October. So what you should do is go to hawaiiunconference.com. And if you want to come, send me an email at tron@selfstoragestrategies.com, and I'll get you a coupon code so you can register and come hang out with some fantastic people, including your friends from the storage group and selfstorageauction.com. All right, you want to talk about call centers? Here we go. So we are now in the world of contactless everything, okay? One of my pet peeves through life has always been smudgy doorknobs and greasy handles on doors, right? And when I've been out inspecting self-storage properties or acting as an interim DM or just looking at some properties I'm invested in, if you want to set me off, have a smudgy front door and a greasy handle to touch. That was before COVID. So now we're at the point where nobody wants to touch anything because we just don't know enough about COVID to know what's safe to touch and how long can I touch it before I need to, start writing out my will. And I don't mean to be flippant about it. It's a terrible situation, right? It's horrible. So many people have died. So many people are sick. Our economy and our families are going to be suffering for years. But fortunately for us as self-storage operators, we've been working on self-service for a long time. Those of you who have been in the business for a long time, remember, before we called this self-storage, we called it self-service storage. Way back in the days, I think it was Buzz Victor who said we should call it self-service storage so people know that we're not handling their goods and we don't have care, control, and custody. So we've been doing it for a long time. And fortunately for many of us operators, when this COVID thing happened, we were already doing remote rentals. So if you use the storage group to build your website and manage your website and you're using Click and Store, you already have a contactless, touchless, remote self-service system in place to do so much of what you need to do, especially if you've integrated in the site maps where people can find their unit easily and so on. Now, you may be surprised, a lot of operators were not doing self-service. They did not have good websites that allowed you to do all your transactions. Surprisingly, a lot of people still don't have call centers, and a lot of people don't have call centers that are well integrated with everything else they're doing. So the call center, in my mind, is really the hub of your contactless situation. So you've got contactless stuff at the site, right? Maybe you have to touch a keypad code. Maybe you've got your app set up so you can press open the gate on your app. Maybe you're using one of the Bluetooth systems where you just wave your phone and it opens up and lets you in. So there's still a great deal of touchless you can do at the site. Then you have your website, your app for doing rentals, for paying bills, all that's lovely. And then you add in the call center. Now, one thing that happened in the COVID world is there are a lot of call centers who were physical call centers where people worked in the center shoulder to shoulder. They had a lot of trouble adjusting to this. So the call centers that did the best in this situation were the ones who already had their agents in the cloud, already had their technology in the cloud. So for them, there was zero transition in operations when we went to COVID catastrophe management. So if you're not using a call center now that has their agents in the cloud working from home or from the beach or from a park bench or wherever they are, and they don't have their technology in the cloud, you need to really re-examine that. You're putting yourself at risk for sure for the next pandemic or the next whatever that happens. So by being able to fold your call center into this, you have peace of mind, your business is being run well, you're still able to provide great service, and your customers are happy, right? Because when you have a call center in place, you basically have 80, 90, 100 hours of phone coverage every week where people can call and get their questions answered, make a payment, rent a unit. The way we set it up at Call Here through the integrations we have with other software providers, we can basically run the whole property from the phone. Do everything. It's smooth, it's seamless. We also have all of our people work from home and they self-manage. And so what I mean by that is people really work independently, and it makes a huge difference for a couple things. One, it is a great system in case we have internet outages or we have hotspots pop up from COVID because our agents work from home in different places. That distributes our risk of technology problems and health problems. So both of those things are super important. So how do you manage something like that? Well, call monitoring is available and performance management tools are available in any call center software that you use. So you can go in and listen to calls in progress. You can listen to history of calls, and you can certainly track results. And really what this is all about is following the most important KPIs, right? So the key performance indicators. And the key performance indicators for call center agents are simple. What's your conversion rate? From the rental inquiries, pardon me, that you talk to, how many of those people rent units from you? Well, at our Call Here call center, we're well over 50%. We have some clients that are in the 60% range. They're renting to 60% of all the rental inquiries that we talk to. That's amazing. That's really good. Now, some of those people rent immediately on the phone. Some of them rent on their second phone call, but still. Now, if you're not getting at least a 40% conversion rate on your rental inquiries, something's wrong. There's a disconnect someplace. Either there's a road bump in technology, there's some functionality you don't have that you should have, your agents are not handling the calls correctly. Something's wrong if you're not at least at 40%. So keep that number in mind. So how do you get to such a great number? Well, you do it by setting up a system so that people can be self-motivated and self-reliant. So one of the things that I talk about sometimes in business consultations, right? Because I also do business consulting for groups outside of the storage business. And what I try to do is to help people make the transition from the plantation industrial mindset of running a business to the mindset of having a collaboration of talented individuals, right? We are so used to running businesses like they were plantations or like they were factories. And that in this world, in this day and age, is a terrible way to run a business for so many reasons, where instead, if what you have is an alliance of skilled people with good talents, now you've got something you can do something with. So if you view your call center agents as talented, skillful salespeople that are a part of your business network, it's a very different way of handling them, and it works really well. Believe me, it's true. The next thing that makes it happen is the integration of tools, right? You've got to have some really good tools or none of it works right. So there are a host of software providers who handle your day-to-day point of sale and reporting that integrate really nicely with our call center software and other tools as well. So when you're using those integrations, you just plug a call center in and now you've just, lit the fire under your business. And using also really good tools. And by tools, I mean how you present the product, what sort of specials you use, what sort of incentives you use, how do you manage the customers once they are your customers, things like that make a big difference in what's successful. The other thing that really helps you manage your center is to just have plain and specific rules. If you're managing by checklists and check boxes, it makes it very easy to know what you should be doing, what you just did, what you might do later, right? It makes it very consistent, and it's easy for the agents, and then it's easy also for your asset managers or your store managers to deal with what the agents did and figure out what's going on. So you've got to have some very plain and very specific rules. So those rules can be anything you want them to be, but they need to be plain and specific. So for instance, we have some clients who say, you can give any tenant up to a 10% discount if that's what it takes to rent the unit, but no more than 10%, plain and simple. We have others that say, you can only rent a unit to someone day of call. If they want the unit tomorrow, they have to rent it starting today. They can't do advance rentals. We have other clients who say you can book an advance rental out 1 week ahead of time. Start the rental up to a week from the phone call. Again, it's a plain and it's a specific rule, and when it's plain and specific, people can figure it out and sort it out pretty well. So what I'm getting at is that there are many models you can use and many approaches you can use to how you manage your call center, what roles your call center agents play, and then how that folds into everything else you're doing. Because not everyone runs their business in exactly the same way. And not every market should be run like other markets. So there is a lot of flexibility there. So what you can do, of course, is what I'm getting at here is the whole point of this, is that with a well-run call center that's well integrated and you're using other good tools like the storage group's websites, you can go completely full remote on your sites. You can use the call center to run everything without anyone else in your business touching anyone, or you can take the other approach and use your call center as just off-site sales support. We have some customers who only push their sales calls to us. Everything else they handle themselves. We have other customers where we are their only point of contact and we basically manage the site from the phones. You can go both ways. They're very successful. It just depends on how you want to run things. What's important to make sure it works is that you have very clear communication between you, your operations people, your asset managers or your store managers, and the call center agents. So whether they're working just for you or working for many other companies, when they get a call for store A, they look at store A and go, oh, I know exactly what to do with this. It's all very plain and simple. It's all been logged correctly into the screens. I know which tools to use so that it's very clear how to proceed. Then you have no confusion on the point of the customers and no confusion for the staff. So all of this is tremendously cost effective because now under the COVID life, in most places, you don't have office hours anyway, and you may not be able to open up the office again. So you can take basically that savings of not having people on site, and that goes to your bottom line. So it's a very cost-effective way to do it. So consider this. Let's say you've got a big site. You might spend somewhere between $400, $500, $600 a month on a call center. Call me later, we'll figure out what that is. But if that's the range you're paying and you're getting, let's say, 400 hours a week of coverage, what's that come out to? That's pretty cheap. And if what you're getting is solid qualified rentals plus a system that allows you to take payments and everything else, it's extremely cost effective, especially when you integrate it with things like automated payment systems or smart routing that will be able to route people different places depending on their caller ID and things like that. The technology has gotten very cool and very, very effective. So it's all good stuff. And this all ends up giving you some very, very clear results. So you can see what your return on investment was. You can see what your trends are looking like. You can see where there's problems because you get reports from the call center agents with questions, or a customer comes back with a question. So your results end up being very clear. Now, I would suggest one thing, and that is that a smaller boutique call center beats a big brick and mortar center any day of the week for effectiveness and for good quality service. So at Call Here, we keep things pretty small intentionally. We answer for something like 100 sites right now. And probably if we ever got to where we answered for 200 or 300 sites, I'd probably even stop promoting the project because it would be at a very nice size. The reason why it works so well at that size is because the agents get to know each individual store, where if you're answering for thousands of sites, one specific agent may get a phone call once a year for your site, where if you're working with a smaller team, agents are constantly getting calls for all the sites and they get to know the sites very well. That's a big advantage. A big disadvantage of a brick and mortar call center is one thing for sure in the COVID world. Even if we're able to spread people out and work with masks, somebody's going to get COVID in the center. And then you're going to have to shut down the center, or you're going to have to do something, or you're going to have to decide that it's okay if on any given day, 5% of your staff are coming to work with COVID, which to me seems like insanity that someone would think that. But it poses a whole new level of risk. Now, one of the other things that is very difficult about running a big center, and I know this, I ran one of the largest of the self-storage call centers for a number of years. It was called PhoneSmart. It hasn't been in existence for a while. It was sold during a reorganization of the parent company. But we had over 100 sales agents. And I can tell you, having on any given shift, 30 or 40 people in one place working together, taking calls, is very difficult. When you have a staff that size, you get a lot of turnover. Turnover is terrible for the call center business because it takes a long time for people to really understand the software well, to really understand how to maneuver through the screens, and to get to know all of the different policies and procedures for all the different clients. Turnover is a disaster. When you have self-managed people working from home, your turnover is close to zero. One of the things that I hated about managing a big call center was I often had to fire really good sales reps because their damn car broke down again and they couldn't get to work. And it was now the third time this quarter they missed work. And in the work rules, it says if you miss 3 days a quarter, you're fired. That was terrible. You'd have to fire good people because their kid got sick or somebody in the family died and you didn't have a bereavement day to give them, but they took the day anyway. It's terrible. Where people work for themselves and self-manage, first of all, getting to work is easy. They go to their home office or they go sit in front of the TV and put their laptop in their lap or however they feel like working that day. And when the team self-manages, if someone can't make it today because they've got something going on or they have to jump off their shift early, it's easy. They go to the group chat and say, hey, I got to jump off early. Somebody wants some time. Somebody else jumps in and takes it. It's easy. One of the other things that's a disaster about having a big group working together shoulder to shoulder is you get so much interpersonal static. Now, I don't know how many of you have watched the sitcom The Office, but it's true. Working together makes everybody crazy. Do you know how many times I had to fire people because they were stealing someone's lunch out of the refrigerator? I had to do that 3 times. It's ridiculous. The interpersonal static of working in a tight group like that is so counterproductive. Anyway, that's my rant on, on having a big call center. So that's why I think it's so important to have a smaller group that brings you some really clear results. Now, it doesn't really matter whether this group is your agents or somebody else's agents. There's a lot of ways to do this. And I work with a lot of people who do it lots of different ways. So there's many options, right? There are a few people now who are saying, you know what? My website's so good, my app's so good, I'm doing so well with what the storage group built for me for doing online and on mobile phone self-service. I'm not even gonna have a call center. No one's even gonna answer the phone. Do you have someone you can call at Facebook if you have a question? What happens if you have a question, you try to call at Amazon? Good luck, all right? So maybe there's something to that. There may be a day when there are no call centers, where everybody just does it, tap it on their smartphone. Now, I'm not trying to hurt my own business by saying that, but that is a possibility. And there are people doing that. Or you can be your own call center. If you have a smaller site or a smaller group of sites, you can set up your call routing in such a way that you can reduce the number of people that actually want to talk to somebody live, and you can just let it ring your cell phone, and you take 10 phone calls a day and save yourself the money. It's possible to do it that way too. Now, there is, of course, an opportunity cost to doing it like that, but you know, in this crazy time now that we live in, you have to weigh all options, and you have to do your math a lot of different ways. You have to explore lots of scenarios to kind of figure out where you're going to go from here, right? So there is a lot to look at. So what do you want to do? You want to create your own call center, or do you want to hire one? Because with the technology that's available now, you really can create a call center with one agent, with all the interesting call routing options out there. Now, one of the things that I do as well through my self-storage strategies projects is I act as a consultant for people who are building out call centers. And I've helped people build out call centers with one agent. I've helped people build out call centers with many, many agents. There is no exact right answer. The right answer is what works for you, what matches your style of management, what matches the effort and sweat you want to put into the project. There's a lot of ways to do it. Of course, it's easy to hire a call center because then you've got a whole system that comes into play. You don't have to invent a bunch of things. You've got a system you can just plug in with all of your other integration tools and just go from there. So I hope I'm giving you some things to think about and not just rattling on, although I think I'm pretty good at rattling on sometimes. So what I would like you to do is to type in some questions. Let Steve lob some questions this way, and let's talk about maybe your specific situation or specific questions you have, frustrations you've had with call centers in the past. Shoot some questions through and let's deal with those. What do you think, Steve? Do you have a couple questions yourself you want to throw out? Because I think I've probably run through enough overview things now where this would be a good time to do the Q&A. What do you say?
Awesome. Okay. Well, we've got, yes, let's the audience, let's fire some stuff back at us here. We've got a question from Beth. She says, she's asking, what platforms do you currently integrate with?
Hey, Beth. So we integrate with SiteLink, Storage Commander. There's a couple others out there. Those are the main ones that we work with, but we use Call Potential as our integrator. And so there are several others that they deal with. But most of the clients that I work with are using SiteLink or Storage. And not to intentionally give a plug to SiteLink, but because they've been around for such a long time, their integration is really pretty thorough. There's others that work good too. So that is a consideration though, because if the site software you're using doesn't integrate well, that's a problem. Right? And this is just a problem in our world, because certainly when I was running a big call center, we were in the process of moving from legacy systems where we had on-premise phone systems. I mean, the closet that had all of our equipment in it was like a 10 by 15 packed with servers and switches and we were transferring from that style of working to moving everything into the cloud. And oh my gosh, the times where you'd have software that didn't play nice with other software were just miserable. So I understand the question. It could be difficult. Thank you, Beth.
Okay. We're waiting for some other ones to come in, but I'm going to go ahead and ask you a couple that I've always been floating around. And, you know, at these trade shows, we always we kind of hear things about other companies or questions people have that they want to get some type of third-party information on. So, yeah, one of the big things, and you mentioned it earlier on, and maybe you can tell the audience a little bit more on your, you know, your methodology in business with regard to running the center. But agent attrition,
Yeah.
big problem in call centers. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit more about how that's better handled with your business model than the grandiose brick and mortar ones?
Sure, sure. So one of the problems with attrition is a lack of support and training, because call center agents want to do a good job. They want to have the right information for a lot of reasons. People generally have good work ethic, but also people generally have good customer service skills. And when they're talking to someone on the phone, they want to be able to give that person a good answer, a straight answer. And if their training isn't that good, they're always going, gosh, I'm not sure what to tell you, or, oh, let me ask my supervisor. And that becomes so stressful that a lot of agents just quit because they don't get enough training or enough support to be able to give people a good answer. And they get tired of feeling like an idiot on the phone and they just quit. So that's one reason why people quit a lot of times. Another reason why agents quit in a big call center is from, let's say, having a petty tyrant as a supervisor. Because in this plantation industrial school of management so many people subscribe to, you've got the big boss who sits in a comfy chair and looks at reports. You've got a couple middle bosses who run around telling everybody what to do and to get back to work. And then you have the field hands who are supposed to, you know, plow the earth and make things happen. And it's a lousy method of communication, and it's a lousy way to move tasks back and forth. And what can happen is one of two things with the middle management people. Sometimes it's someone who is very successful in the field and they become a middle management person, but nobody ever teaches them how to manage people. And so they're just winging it. Not everybody's good at that just by nature. And so you end up with some lousy supervisors that way. Another problem is sometimes the big boss in the comfy chair just wants someone who's loud and snappy and pushy as a supervisor because they somehow think that makes things happen. So you have generally a certain percentage of your supervisors are incompetent, and another section of your supervisors are just bullies. And nobody wants to work for a bully or someone who's incompetent. And even if half of your supervisors are wonderful and know how to manage people and are great at helping and motivating and so on, man, you just need one or two incompetent people or bullying people, and people will quit in spite of you having some really good managers. That's another big reason that people quit. Another reason people quit is because, let's face it, call center work is not a high-paying job. There's nobody making $150,000 a year answering phone calls for your store. So a lot of times people can't afford to stay because if their car breaks down, if they're, I mean, name it, there's 100 things that can happen to somebody. And most people working in call centers don't have 6 months of emergency cash put together. So they run into a problem and they have to quit because they can't afford to get to work anymore. They can't afford to buy nice shoes to wear to work or whatever the issue is. There's so many problems with the way big call centers have been run. Now there's a lot of people moving away from that because they realize some of these problems. But that's why if you have people working from home, managing themselves, taking care of themselves, now they've got a huge motivation to stay with you because the flexibility is tremendous. It helps them manage their life because even the most conscientious worker would look at your project and you are not their first priority, and you shouldn't be, right? Their first priority should be their family and then themselves and then their religion and then their hobby. And then, you know, if you're lucky, you're number 5, you're doing good, but it's tough to be number 5. But if the flexibility you give people and the satisfaction of training that you give people makes it easy to be number 5, then they stay. There's no reason for them to leave. They'd be nuts to leave. They couldn't get better working conditions.
Right.
So that's kind of my rant on that, Steve. I
Right.
hope that makes sense.
It does. It does. And we've got several questions coming up here now.
Cool.
I guess we're getting the brain cells moving now.
Yes.
So I got a question from Noah. He says he's asking, what are the advantages of a call center versus a kiosk?
Hey, Noah, thanks for asking. So many times a kiosk and a call center work beautifully hand in hand, because the kiosk is fantastic if the person shows up and they see, hey, rent your storage here with the sign. They go, great. They walk up, they do their thing, they're in. Now, someone calls you first on the phone. If your response to them is going to be, hey, it's so easy to rent with us, just go down to the kiosk and take care of it, you've created a risky situation where between you talking to them on the phone and them getting to your kiosk, something happens and they don't get there, or the money they were planning on using has to get spent. So I think we lose more rentals to the kids growing out of their shoes than to anything else. Because someone calls you on a Monday and says, hey, I want to come get a unit Saturday. You say, great, see you Saturday. Tuesday morning, their 8-year-old wakes up and their shoes don't fit anymore, because if you've had kids, you know that happens. Their feet will grow an inch sometimes overnight. Now they got to go buy the kid's shoes, and the $50 or $100 they were going to put towards that storage unit is now gone, so you don't see them Saturday. So if you're using a call center as a complement to your kiosk, you talk to them on the phone, rent them the unit on the phone, you've got them. Another thing that works well as a complement is, one of the theories of selling to people is you should let people buy from you how they want to buy from you. Not everybody likes a kiosk. Not everybody's comfortable with it. Not everybody wants to talk to somebody on the phone. Not everybody feels like talking to a sales rep, right? So you have all these different ways of people to buy from you. That works great. I would also suggest that if you have a good app and a good call center, you may not need a kiosk, because if someone comes down to your store and they can take a picture of your QR code and it immediately takes you to the click in store page, they can use their phone as a kiosk. Or if you have a number there that says, hey, call this number and you can rent right now, someone calls the number, your agent picks up, says, yeah, sure, I can take care of that for you right now, and I'll give you the gate code, you go move in, you're all set. So it comes down to what your preference is, what your business model is, whether you use just a kiosk, no call center, just a call center, no kiosk, use them together. That is the nice thing about having some interesting technologies, is that you can kind of figure out how it needs to work for you. So, no, I hope that answered your question.
Okay, great. We got about 6 or 7 more questions here. Tron, got one from Kurt. What is the average service level for your agents?
Sure.
Let me see.
Thanks,
hold on.
Kurt.
There's more there. The
Okay.
percentage of calls answered to calls presented. Of the calls answered, what is the percentage of calls that were leads versus current customers or marketing and junk calls? So I guess he's trying to get a little bit more KPI from you on that.
Great question, Kurt. Some important stuff. So you can set your service levels however you think you need to for what you're doing. And one thing I'll tell you is that if you're running a call center, you cannot afford to answer 100% of the calls. It's just not possible, because the calls come in peaks and valleys. And then you just have to decide for your operation, what's optimal for you and what can you afford? Is it going to be 80% of all calls within 60 seconds? Is it going to be 90% of all calls in 30 seconds? Right? What's that going to be? And what way can you afford to do it? Now, the other part of your question also helps the first part of your question, because in general, what we're seeing is somewhere between 5 to 7% of all inbound phone calls are actual rental inquiries, right? All the rest of them are all the other stuff. People wanting to make a payment, people calling with just questions, somebody trying to sell you a yellow page ad. Does anyone know what the yellow pages are anymore? I'm just checking to see. Okay, a bad attempt at a joke. But so if you look at it that way and you say, if 7% of my calls are rental inquiries, and I have a really good website and my mobile site works great, what should I do there? Should I go for answering as many calls as possible, or should I go for having as efficient a system as possible, right? So I would say the efficient as possible system would be to shoot for 80% of calls in 60 seconds, because that's going to give you the most cost-effective means of answering the most calls you can get to. That's up to you to decide how you want to do that. I prefer to do it that way and have a very efficient center that is going to bring lots of new value in, because if you look at it, the cost difference between, say, getting from 80% to 90% might negate the gain you get from that one extra rental that those other 10% of the calls got you. So I don't know if that makes a lot of sense or if I'm just talking geek talk there, but that's kind of a roundabout way of answering that. There you go. Kurt, if that didn't really answer your question very well, email me. We can talk more about it later. But thank you. That was a good question.
Okay, Tron, we've got a question from Harry. Is call here part of storage here?
Harry, yes, hi. Yeah, so call here is a subsidiary of Store Here. And Store Here is a management company and an ownership company that runs about 20 sites right now. About 2/3 of those are owned and the others are managed. And it was started as a subsidiary. And what that really gives you, from my point of view, is a nice, first of all, a nice base foundation of stores to work with. And it also gives you a much better perspective on how you handle sites and how you put together your policies, because you're thinking like an owner. And I think that's important. So if you recognize the logo at all, it looks a lot like Store Here. So you can look at the Store Here sites at storehere.com. Thanks. Appreciate that, Harry.
Okay, good. And we got a couple, well, we still got several more questions. We got a follow-up question here from Kurt.
Yeah.
What type of training do you do to ensure your agents are focused on selling the features and benefits of the property, overcoming caller objections, collecting good follow-up information, and closing strong by closing the sale over the phone or booking the reservation site visit? So yeah, I guess he's trying.
Good questions.
Yeah, there you go.
Good questions, Kurt. So the whole training thing is a very interesting thing we could spend days talking about, because what some people's approach to training is to basically have a checkbox approach for scripting, to have a certain script that covers the 3 main points and the 4 main features and that sort of thing. And I do believe in scripting for new agents learning how to sell and how to work the phones. But our agents don't have scripting. Our agents just have a conversation with people. And when you get to that approach, it makes a huge difference. I don't know how many of you are Bruce Lee fans, but Bruce Lee was famous because he said, you know, you can study 17 styles of fighting, but in the end, there's only fighting, right? And that's kind of the approach you should take with your salespeople. Is at a certain point, there's no more selling, there's just a conversation. And you have 2 ways, or well, maybe more than that, to make sure that you're getting the goal you want. The one is, if your systems are set up to make the easiest thing renting the unit over the phone, then it's just a natural flow of things that you rent the units over the phone. because the path of least resistance and most pleasantness is renting the unit over the phone. If you then incentivize that with bonuses and commissions and so on, then the agents are thinking, well, I know on any given day I can do, X number of rentals over the phone, and that's going to make me Y amount of money. So today my goal is to get to, Z number of rentals, and then they're working every call to get a rental. So the important thing is, on the phone, they have to remember what I call my first rule of selling, which is you can't actually sell anybody anything, but you can help people talk themselves into buying just about anything. So as you have the conversation with someone, you can help them talk themselves into renting from you. And if your system is very smooth down the path to rental, then you rent a lot of units over the phone. And that's, again, maybe a roundabout way to answer that, but it's more a conceptual issue and a design issue than it is a script issue, if that makes sense to you.
Okay, great. Great questions. We've got, let's see, 4 more, and we've got about 5-6 minutes left. So
all right.
We've got a question from Beth, and she's asking, when people are working from home, are they paid by the shift normally, by the call, or some other method?
Hey, Beth, thank you. That's a very good question. So you have a couple ways of doing that, and it's really kind of up to you. I prefer just to pay them by the hour and pay commissions for certain goals. So you get a commission for that, you get a commission for this. Things that are easily trackable, things that are significant, I prefer to do it that way, because the agents working from home, they're thinking, well, I'm going to block out this time to work on the call center project today. And it makes it easier for them to conceptualize what they're doing. It makes it easier for them to justify to their family why they're sitting there with their laptop open and all that sort of thing. So that's how I prefer to do it. There are a lot of ways to do it. One thing I would tell you, though, is don't try to make your call center agents 1099 people unless you are going to give them zero amount of direction and zero amount of guidance, because call center agents are not good 1099 case studies. So don't do that. You'll get yourself in trouble. So I hope that answers your question, Beth. Thank you.
Okay, great. Yeah, no one needs any trouble with the IRS, that's for sure. Okay, how about, we got a question here from Harry. Do you have integration with Store Local?
Hey, Harry. So that is on the way, as I understand, that Store Local is working with Call Potential to finish up the, what's it called? Hummingbird, butterfly. I don't remember which garden friend it is. Hummingbird, maybe. I think that integration is underway, and how long that takes is hard to say. It depends on how well the APIs work together and what little glitches come up in practice. But that is in progress. So thanks for asking, Harry.
Okay, we got a couple follow-up questions from Kurt, and let's see. Are your agents able to assist customers with after-hour issues, like being able to text an access code once the caller's identification has been confirmed and the account has been confirmed to be in good status?
Yes, so that's really just a policy preference issue for the client who we may be answering for. People have different levels of comfort as to what we can do for them. But yes, we have the capability of giving people codes, of doing, about the only thing we can't do is check locks. That's about the only thing we can't do from the phones.
Okay.
Thanks.
And, yeah, Kurt's got the next couple questions. Here's one. Without scripting, how are your agents able to remember what amenities they should be selling for our stores versus other locations that may not have full line of features and benefits?
Good question, Kurt. So when the agents look at the screens, they have everything they need in front of them. Hey, I'm not sure who's causing the background noise there. Can whoever that is, go on mute for a second. I don't think that's me. But so when the agents look at a screen, they can see from the tags that are on the screen, from the notes that are right in front of them, if there's anything special about this site. Because one of the things that call center agents have to be very good at is having a routine of how their eyes work the screen, looking for the things they need. So they never go, what, where is that? Where is that? Or they don't go, huh, to callers, right? So there are a lot of sites that have nice features and benefits. However, bad news to us storage people, almost all storage places are pretty much alike, and most callers could care less what your features are. What they want to know is it going to meet their expectation? Can they get in today? Yes, sometimes people are looking for features. They want a certain thing, but that comes out in the phone call. That shows up in the conversation. But the agents have all of that in front of them if they need it. So if a caller, let's say, for instance, says, man, I was really looking for climate control and I'm just having trouble finding it, the agent sees on their screen, oh, there's climate control here. And they can say, no problem, you've called the right place. We've got climate control units. Let me know kind of what you're planning on storing and we'll get you in one. So lots of good stuff there. I appreciate the follow-up there, Kurt. And I think it looks like we're getting to the end here. So yeah, to respect the timeline, I'll pass it back to Steve. And okay, thank you guys so much for being on the call with us. And good luck and good selling, y'all.
Tron, I would suggest that you get a hold of Kurt. He's asked some questions on pricing and some other probably business performance stuff that you wouldn't want to go public right away. So you may want to reach out to him. Okay. Thank you, Tron. Thanks for all the thanks for the great questions. Thanks for all the great information. Perfect. Okay, 2 more winners before we take a quick break. We've got Thelma Lambert. Congratulations. $100 gift card. And Noah Bullock, you are a winner as well. We're going to give you guys some money to go spend and have some fun with. We're going to take a 15-minute break. I encourage all of you to come on back. We've got a great afternoon of information. We've got the self-storage legal network gentlemen with us, Carlos and Scott, going to be talking to us about the new normal with COVID and making sure your lien process is being completed properly in these times. Then we're going to move on to some auction information. So how to conduct and a platform of how to do online auctions, live auctions. And then obviously we're going to go into a little bit of AI and some further information to kind of couple the lien process and auctions together so everybody can be aware of what's going on. All very pertinent information for this date and time. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to take a short break. We will start immediately on the hour, so come back quickly. And I guarantee you this afternoon is going to be packed full of great information. And if anybody lost somebody, if you can reach back out to them and bring them back in, because I'm telling you, this afternoon is stuff that you don't want to miss. All right, we'll be back here in about 14 minutes.